Today, you're going to learn all about animating thumbnail galleries. Before we begin, this video sponsors HelloSign, which offers an API that helps companies grow revenue faster by automating document workflows with a developer-friendly e-signature API that makes it simple and easy to embed secure and legally binding documents directly into your website. G2 Crowd says HelloSign's API is 2 times faster to implement than any other e-sign provider. You or your devs can send your first API call in minutes, and your app certification is always free, and you won't find an e-signature product with an easier path to implementation. All right, let's get back to it. Hey everyone, Gary Simon of Corsetro. So today we're going to take a look at creating and animating based on a hover, a thumbnail gallery of sorts. So let me just show you what I'm talking about here on the desktop. So this is the landing page that I've been working with, although you don't have to use this landing page because everything that we're doing today is strictly down here in this section. All right, so as you can see, there's a number of different things happening when it comes to these animations. Now, for me, it's a really smooth animation, but based on the frame rate of this video, it may look a little bit jagged to you, but it's absolutely smooth on my end. And you can see there's a lot of different things happening here based on this hover state. So we're going to be creating this from scratch in HTML and then CSS with Sass going forward in this video. All right, so for today's question, what resources do you use for UI inspiration? All right, so this could be CodePen. This could be one of the UI gallery websites. Go ahead and mention it if you really use something that you think is valuable, and then just mention it in the comments, and I'll give you my thoughts as a pinned comment as well. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so once again, we're going to be using the project, the landing page project that I've been working on in previous tutorials, and I will go ahead and link the different GitHub repos for it during the different stages of this landing page. But basically, if I click go live and watch Sass real quickly, this is where we're at right now. Now, the thing to remember is that if you want to start with a blank index.html page with a CSS with a Sass file in it, you can do just that if you want. You don't, this what I'm about to teach you doesn't require you to have this project here. I'm just going to be attaching some CSS or HTML and CSS at the end of each respective file in index.html first, and then main.sass. All right. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to hit F11, and we'll also click on main.sass so that we have it. All right. And what we're going to start off with here is just writing some HTML at the very end here. So just above our body tag, I'm going to put in section, and then we're going to put in an H2, and then we're just going to put latest tutorials. So this will be a gallery that kind of just lists out in thumbnail/card format latest tutorials, and you'll see how this works in a second. We'll put in a paragraph tag, and I'm going to simply copy and paste off screen. This is where you could use a lorem ipsum text if you want. All right, and then we need a wrapper to contain the thumbnail images, and we'll make this a grid, a CSS grid. I can't talk today. What's going on with me? All right, it's late actually. So anyhow, then what's going to encase each thumbnail or card is going to be a figure element. All right, and inside of here, we're going to have our image source, and this is going to serve as the basis for the thumbnail. And I'm going to use images, guitar1.jpg. All right, so here in images, we have our logo, and then I have a guitar 1, 2, and 3. I used Google Images, and I sorted it by free for commercial use, and I just got 3 different guitar images, as you can see here. All right, of course, these can be anything. All right, then after that, we're going to put in just a div class called additional, so that we can reference all this stuff, and then by default it's going to be hidden or at an opacity 0, and then when it's hovered, we'll bring this all into life by targeting the additional class. So we're going to put in our p tag here, learn how to write leads in the Phrygian mode. That's guitar theory stuff. And then I'll put in an A, and this is going nowhere. And then the anchor text for this one will be a download button. And then we'll have another one which is going nowhere as well. And this one will be a more info button. All right. And, oh, I also forgot one thing. Yeah, I got ahead of myself a little bit. I forgot a couple elements here. We're going to put fig caption, which is used in conjunction with figure. And we're going to encase that entire thing right there. And then we're also going to put in an H3 right here for a title. And of course, this is optional when you're dealing with thumbnails. You can choose to omit like a title if you want, but it does provide the user with specific information if you're just kind of using arbitrary sort of thumbnail images where you can't really ascertain exactly what's happening. And that is my case. And so that's it. This is all the HTML, and what we're going to do is just take this whole figure section, because this right here, all this HTML is one thumbnail or one card, and we're going to paste it. I hate that formatting. Yeah, we'll paste it for a total of 4. So we want to have 4. And one more time. Right there. I'm just hitting Shift and Tab to get that tabbed right. All right, and then real quickly, just so we have a different look at images, this is guitar 1 up here, 2, 3, and then I'm just going to go back to 1 right here. All right, so now if we go back to our browser, you'll see that we have our images right here. They're not all the same size, and it probably would help to make them so that they are the same size, but no big deal. But now we have some layout work to do in CSS. All right, let's get out of there. Okay, so basically we have a lot of CSS in the format of Sass here, but don't let that bother you. There's nothing really happening here that's going to affect what you learn here specifically for these thumbnails. So we're just going to get started by referencing the very first element that we just wrote, which is our section. All right, so in our section, I'm just going to put some padding around it, 4 EM. Now, I'm not making this responsive. I'm going to leave that up to you guys if you wanted to make it responsive, but it's going to work well at around this viewport resolution right around here. All right, and then I'm going to reference our H2 inside of there. And this is just that latest tutorials text that we have. 2 EM, margin bottom. We're getting rid of default margin bottom on that element. Our paragraph, which is just underneath it, I'm going to do font size is 1.3 EM, and margin 0 on the top and right, 2 EM on the bottom, and then 0 on the left. All right, so at this point, this is what we're looking like so far. We have that 4 EM padding happening right here, and a little better section for our headline and subheadline right here. All right, so continuing on, now we get to our gallery. The gallery class, if I'm looking at this correctly, yes, is the wrapper right here. This is the very next element. All right, so we need to make this a grid container. So display grid, and we're going to say grid template columns repeat, which is a function that we can use. How many times do we want to repeat this value that we're about to insert, which is auto. So what this is saying is this is the same thing as auto, 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 auto. But that's obviously quite verbose and redundant, so we're just going to put repeat for auto. All right. So now if we save it, we'll see that we have a really long situation happening here, but we'll fix that momentarily. All right, so now the next element that we have is our figure. So let's get that going. All right, so for our figure, we're going to give it a margin of 3 pixels. So that's only going to separate each thumbnail by 3 pixels right there on all sides. Overflow, we're going to say hidden. Position is relative. Now, setting this to position relative, which is the figure is the parent container of the image. So let me just show you real quickly. So we have figure. It's the parent container of this image right here, and also this fig caption section. So when we make figure relative and we make fig caption absolute, it'll make it so that fig caption sits on top of this image section right here. And that's how we want these thumbnails to be designed. Sometimes, you know, if you're dealing with card-based format, you'll have the metadata associated, like the title or subheadline or whatever, or description underneath the thumbnail, which is fine, but I'm choosing to put it on top of the thumbnail. So, because that's the important part with it there. Of course, overflow hidden is in relation to the image. So we're going to scale up the image slightly by like 1.1. And then that way we won't see everything outside of it. So that's what that's for. We'll put in background color. We're going to make it yellow, which is kind of the theme going on with this particular project. And then transition, we're going to transition the background color by 0.5 seconds. And we change it to black on hover later on. So after all that, this is what things are looking like so far. Not exactly correct, but you know, we're getting there. All right. So now inside of figure, we also have our image tag, which is right here. All right. So our image, we're going to say width. We're going to say calc, which is another function that we can use. 100% the parent container. We're going to put plus 60 pixels. Opacity will be 0.7 by default. And then transform. We're going to translate 3D. We're going to put 0, -20 pixels. Oops, put a 0 there. And then 0 for that value. And then scale 1.12. So we're moving it over and also scaling it up by 1.12. And then finally, we're going to transition all 0.5 seconds. As we can see, we're going to transition the opacity and the transform on hover in a bit. All right, so obviously we're getting somewhere now just based on those changes that we made. All right, so now we're going to reference the fig caption, which is the next element in our index right here. All right, so let's close that out. There we go. So in fig caption, that's what's containing all the data from the H3 and then div class additional. So we want that on top of the thumbnail. So we make it position absolute as I mentioned before. All right, but now obviously it's not showing up. We're going to have to just adjust a couple things here. I'm going to put in padding, 1 EM on the top and bottom and 2 EM on the right and left. Top, we're going to say 0. So it's going to position, you know, this whole fig caption section to the top of the parent container at 0. Color is going to be white for the text, and then text align center. So let's save this. Oh, didn't want that. Clicked on the wrong browser. And there we go. We can now see it, but it's a little hard to see and read at this point. So we're getting there. All right, so now in fig caption, we have a couple, let's see, we have our H3 and we have our additional. So let's reference the H3 here. And our H3 is going to be font weight of bold. Font size is going to be 1.2 EM. We're going to text transform, and this is the title, by the way, to uppercase. We're going to make the background black simply because it's a little bit hard to read based on the colors that I'm using for the background. So this will ensure great contrast on it. All right, and then we're going to also display inline block, which will allow this background to really encase it, you know, just the exact length of the text as needed. And then we're going to add some padding of 0.5 EM on the top and 0.7 EM on the right and left. So now if we save it, this is looking much better and we can actually read it now. All right. Continuing on, let's reference the additional class, which has just the stuff that we want to only show up when it's being hovered on. So first of all, I'm going to change the font family here to Montserrat, and I have that installed on my PC. It's a Google Web font, but you can import it at the top if you wish. And then we're going to say for the paragraph that we have in there, a margin bottom of 20 pixels. Where is that paragraph? Just this part here. So that's pushing down those two buttons a bit. We're We also have the call to action buttons. All right, so there's a fair amount of CSS rule sets for this. So first we're going to do display again inline block. All right, and then we're going to make the background white. We're going to make text transform uppercase. We're going to do text decoration none. We don't want to underline. We're going to do a padding of 0.5 EM all around, a font weight of bold, a color of black to make the text black, and then border radius, if I can type, will be 4 pixels. So let's save that. All right, we're getting somewhere. Don't worry. We will. I know it doesn't look great right now. We're going to use the last child, by the way, and this is going to be a background of none. We're just going to change the second button up here for the, I think it's the more info button. We're just going to change the style a little bit. So we're going to get rid of the background, give a 1 pixel solid white border, a color of white text, and margin left, just to push it away from the other button a little bit more by 5 pixels. So this is what we have. Now, of course, readability is horrible right now because we're not changing the background. And so I plan to really dim out that background, and then this stuff in the foreground will become much more readable, because as it stands, this sucks. All right, so now we're going to come out 3 brackets here, and we're going to reference our fig caption. Actually, we're going to save that for maybe the end. All right. I'm just looking at exactly what I want to do right here. Okay, let's do right here additional. And we're going to say by default the opacity is 0. And we're going to transform and scale 1.3. So we're starting off by default when the mouse isn't hovered over one of the thumbnails with obviously opacity 0. But we're also taking the transform up larger. And you think, well, why would you do that? You can't see it because we have opacity 0. Well, that's because once we hover over it, we create the hover state. We're going to set the scale to 1, and it will create this effect where it's kind of zooming, you know, from large to small. So that's that. And then transition all at half a second. So now if we save this, we'll see that we can't see it anymore. And this is the default appearance of these thumbnails. I'm not sure if I like it that much, but it's fine for now, whatever. So now, let's see here. We're going to come out 2 more. And here's where we're going to change a few things. This is where most of our hover states are. So our figure hover, we're going to do background, black. All right, so the first thing that's going to change right here. Very cool. Now, I'm not sure how smooth these animations are showing up for you based on my frame rate of this video, but it's very smooth on my end. All right, we're going to do figure, first child. We're just going to get rid of any margin on the left of that element. Nothing big happening here. Figure hover, image. All right, so we're going to transform, translate 3D, and this is what I was talking about before, 0, 0, 0. In scale to 1. So we're resetting it to its default position only on hover. And we're going to set the opacity to 0.4. So now, there we go. We get this cool zooming type of effect. All right, let's continue on. We're also going to do figure, hover, additional. And this is going to be an opacity of 1. This is for the text overlay stuff and the buttons. And then transform, scale 1 as well. Ah, look at that. Much better. All right, and then we just have one final rule set for this effect. So fig caption before. And this is, we're going to come back to this. This is the, I'm glad I didn't forget this. I skipped over one of the elements. I wanted to have some sort of play on this whole slant thing. That's the whole thing I'm going for this upcoming secondary YouTube channel, where we have a lot of different slant elements, right? So I kind of wanted like some sort of inlay cut slant kind of thing happening here when we hover over it. So here's what we're going to do for this. We're going to say our fig caption, which is the whole container of each thumbnail before. We're going to set the content to empty. And we're going to give it a border top of 60 pixels, solid white. And then we're going to do a position of absolute, a right 0, a top 0. A bottom will be 30 pixels. And the left is going to be, well, let's save this right now. See if we can actually see the thing at this point. Not yet. Don't worry, we'll get there. And then we'll put left here, negative 75%. And then we're going to do a height of 100%. A transform of rotate Z. So what we have here is what this is creating, this fig caption, is just a simple horizontal line, a border that's really thick, 60 pixels, that's solid white. All right, and then we're positioning absolute so it can sit on top of the container, and we're positioning it here. And then I'm going to be using transform and rotating it at an angle of negative 45 degrees. And then translate 3D, I'm also going to be pushing it over by negative 30 pixel, or percent rather, and 0. And then we're going to do a transition of transform 0.5 seconds. So we want to transition the transform property. And then we're going to come down here on the hover state. This is where we make everything work. That's why it wasn't working before. I forgot that. Transform, rotate Z, negative 45 degrees, translate 3D, and we bring it back into view here with all 0 elements. So take that out. Cool stuff. All right. So that is basically the effect. And as you can see, with all the CSS properties and values that we just wrote, you can drastically change up the appearance of exactly what's happening here with this. I could probably add even more by doing hover states of the buttons and all that cool stuff. All right, so hopefully you found that useful. Make sure to answer today's question, which is, which resources do you use for UI inspiration? All right, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.